Gan fod gennyt yr hamdden, gan dy fod heddiw mewn oriel ac felly'n meddu ar y fraint o arafu dy gam, dy anadl, y meddyliau ehedog gwydedog sy'n drybwndian. A chan dy fod yma yn unswydd i ryfeddu at geindra creadigaeth drwy gramen y wydyr. Llonydda, ac edrycha draw am enid neu awr at waddodion caled yr hinogydd, sy'n grawen denau fel haen o fenyn uwch craig fyrlymus craidd y ddaear. Fel y dawr copaon at y dŵr i drochi breichian y bae. A sut mae môr y trochi hwnnw weithiau'n befr diamwntau, ac weithiau'n corddi'n llwyd a gwyrdd. Fel yr ymestynna'r bae rhwng yma ac acw, yn y gofod rhwng anadliad a chefnfor, ac fel yr wyt ti yma yn y gragen hon yn fwy o ddŵr na dim oll arall. Fel y daw creaduriaid weithiau o'r dwfn, gam a naid o fan hyn, wedi nyddu drwy raffa plastig, sut mae'r eithin ar y foel yn llosgi'n amlach nag y bu, ac fel yr wyt ti'n ymwybodol heb weld fod pethau'n tagu. Pethau sydd haen yn is na'r cyfan, perlau byw yn y tonau sy'n pylu'n dawel. Fel yr wyt ti'n gwybod yn iawn mae'r rhaid i sylw bach ydi sail y byd.
Mae hanes Plas Glyn y Weddw yn eitha diddorol i gwir. Mae o'n 170 oed ers adeiladu'r Plas flwyddyn yma. Mi teulu Madryn, Bonisig Elizabeth Jones Parry, hi nath y gomisiynu'r Plas. A'i gomisiynu fel tŷ gweddw, a'i gŵr i di marw yn 1853, wedyn adeiladu'r Plas fel y lle iddi fynd, fel gwraig gweddw lle, so oedd y mab yn cymryd drosodd y tŷ. Ond nath i adeiladu'r Plas fel oriel bach bersonol i hun mewn ffordd lle. Ac yn ôl y sôn, nath i ddim gwario'r noson yma, nath i ddod yma, medda nhw, rhyw unwaith yr wsos, i wneud siŵr bod y gweision yn wneud i gwaith, ac i fwynhau y lloches sydd yma yn y llecyn hwn yn Llanbedrog. Ac erbyn y 70au mi oedd y tŷ hun, y tŷ mawr y plasty hun wedi dechrau mynd ei ben iddo. Ac mi fysa fo, mae siŵr wedi mynd heblaw ymweledigaeth cwpl lleol, Gwynedd a Dafydd ap Thomas. Brynodd y Plas ar ardd ei hun gan y teulu McMasters yn 1979. Amcan elusen Plas Glyn y Weddw, dwi'n meddwl, ers y cychwyn un, ers 1996, ydy rhoi adnodd gelfyddydol i artistiaid Cymreig, Cymreig ifanc lle. Ers y cychwyn oedden ni'n cario weledigaeth ymlaen gan Gwynedd a Dafydd ap Thomas i roi cyfle i artistiaid ifanc Cymreig ar ddangos i gwaith mewn lleoliad bendigedig fel y Plas.
We wanted to try and have something artistic as well as gastronomically excellent to aid the income streams of the gallery.
Y digwydd cael trafodaeth gyda un o gerflunwyr sydd wedi bod yn arddangos yma ers blynyddoedd, Matt Sanderson. Mi nath o dweud, wel, beth yw'n mynd i mi gynnig dyluniad a gweithio gyda penseiri cadwreithol. A gwneud gwaith celf allan o'n fo.
Quite often a commission will come to us in the form of an email or a phone call, but this was very different. We go to North Wales very regularly and have been going for 20 years. I'm going to this specific gallery for a long time. And we walked in and discovered that there was a challenge there, that this gallery had a cafe that wasn't fit for purpose.
Mi roeddwn ni 3 mis sydd ddod i fyny efo cynllun, ac mi ddoth o gerbron y bwrdd ym mis Medi, oedd hi'n 2018. Ac A mae tro cyntaf, mi wnaeth y bwrdd cyfan y holl ymdreidolwyr cytuno yna.
This beautiful Gothic mansion from the 1800s was a complete alien thing when it landed, and people were shocked. There's nothing like it on Glyn or in North Wales. I've loved the staircase, the columns, the flying buttresses, the hammer and beam trusses. They're all beautiful things that I've enjoyed for years. It was designed and built in a revolutionary period in human history where people were avorously collecting natural history right across the world. And this is a time when Darwin was releasing The Origin of the Species, that his German counterpart, Ernest Haeckel, the zoologist, a marine zoologist, was fishing things out of the soup in the South Pacific and having a look at invisible structures for the first time and then drawing what he could see under the microscope. Whole worlds were becoming exposed to people. And that's the first place I went, not to the foundations with a tape measure, but down to the beach. And I found sea urchin tests and barnacles and starfish and shells, as I have been for 20 years. And I collected those friends, those little gems, and I measured those instead. And I scaled them up. And it seemed logical to me to use the natural flora and fauna and zoology of the place to inform the building design, the sculpture design.
Dyma'r cynllun da ni isio. Pam ddim caffi sydd yn waith celf hefyd. Pam nath ni'n meddwl am hyn yn gynt, da ni'n oriol, da ni'n ganolfan gelfyddydol. Pam nath ni'n meddwl cael mewnbwn gan artist. A dyna fydd y gwyddoedd ddaw, ers tro cyntaf mi weld y cynllun a'r dyluniad, da ni weld, mae hwn yn wahanol, mae hwn yn special, mae hwn yn just beth da ni isio.
I've really looked inside the shells and finds on the beach. Instead of just looking at the outer carapace, I've looked inside the endoskeleton to see how that they are structurally formed. And it's that natural mathematics that props up the building, the design, the concept. This site is in the middle of a marine conservation zone, and all of the beaches around Glyn are worth a visit. They're so different from each other and so festooned with the most incredible collection of natural objects. They inspired me to create a blanket over the whole building, a protective skin like they do over a particular rock. I wanted to bring the building to life in a shining blanket of a homage to the colony of the barnacle, if you like.
Ac mae rhaid bod yn onest, dim pawb oedd yn hoff o'r dyluniad ar y cychwyn. Gynna ni fodel bach yn y neuadd a mi o'n rhai bobl wrth i bodda fo o'r cychwyn. Mi o'n lleiafrif diolch byth yn lleisio barn reit sgrin i erbyn o'r lle.
And suddenly this appeared and we all went, what is that? And it is the roof and the side of our new cafe, taken its inspiration from the sea urchin. And it was a complete Marmite situation. Some people loathed it. Some people even went into your shop and complained, didn't they?
They did. Well, we had to say, look, this is an art gallery. We can't have something expected. We have to be out of the box.
I needed to produce a design, and whilst I could come up with a concept of using a sea urchin test and bringing in other forms to complement that, I needed help in making sure that this design would stand up.
We talked about the size of it, what would work in terms of the function, and we started building little structural analysis models to check kind of how much load goes into each part of the frame. Once we'd arrived at a kind of general form for the frame, we then talked about each element. There's no standard off-the-shelf component, beam or bit of steelwork anywhere in the building, so everything is bespoke.
Because there's so much to be respected of the old Gothic mansion, not just in terms of visual terms, but in terms of floor levels and heating and light, and all of those needed qualifying by a proper architect that could take us through the rebus stages.
So the opportunity to bring together the arts and architecture in this way was fascinating, particularly regarding the Gothic nature of the existing building. It's grade 2 star listed building, which we had to design a contemporary extension towards and to pick up on little details in a way which would give us elevations and sections and details that a listed building officer would be able to be happy with to approve the project.
Yn lwcus iawn mi gafon ni ddau gwmni lleol gwahanol i wneud y ddau brosiect, a ddau gwmni da iawn, lle Henry Jones yn wneud y gwedd 1, a cwmni OBR o Llangefni i wneud y gwedd 2, sef y caffi a'r gegin. A wedi bod yn lwcus iawn i ddigwyr i gael y ddau gwmni mor safonol i wneud y gwaith yna.
The important thing with kitchen design is to get everything so that everything's where people need it and where it's expected to be. By doing that, you can use a relatively tighter area to maximize the efficiency. And the easier it is for the kitchen staff to work there, the more productive they can be.
It was good because I had my input and they sort of listened to me. They asked me what I wanted. Walk-in fridge is absolutely fantastic. And then I've got my mixers where I make all my cakes, and then I've got a big lovely oven that I would love to take home but I can't.
We had to do a test assembly at our works. And this was a really exciting stage because it's the first time we saw the design brought together in a big umbrella skeleton, and we could test all of our joints and theories with the crane and with the scaffold and with the special tower we made to support the building. And importantly and excitingly, we built it from the top down. We didn't start with columns coming up from the ground. We put what we call the oculus, which is the window right at the centre top of the building, right at the top of the test of the sea urchin. And then we bolted the ribs to that and came down to the column heads, and then we put the quarter-foil columns on, and that came to the base level and ground. And from that hanging point, we were able to see the space and the volume that people would then use for the first time. We took a product that is very recycled. It's about 80% recycled stainless steel, which means it's very, very resistant to corrosion and salt weathering because, of course, we're in a marine environment, so we need to select materials that are going to last an awful long time. So we take sheet stainless steel and we punch it into circles. Punching sounds like it's aggressive, but in fact it's a very smooth process of very refined cutting tools that pierce through the metal to create the circles. The tooling was made in mild steel originally, but had to be developed into hardened tool steel, and that was done on computer and then by CNC manufacture. So we went through a development process of creating hardened steel tooling that will make the circles, which are very two-dimensional, into three-dimensional forms. And we created 80,000 of those.
The 3D software enabled us to build one of Matt's barnacles, which form the surface of the cladding. I was able to model one and then duplicate that around the surface of the dome to be able to give Matt a template of which he then forms his barnacles to.
Every barnacle had to be welded to its neighbour, and that took at least 5 welds per barnacle, and there's already 80,000 barnacles. And of course, they're not in a flat sheet, they're in a curved form. So we had to create a mould for this as well. Every barnacle could be placed and tessellated next to its friend, and each welded to the next.
Ac gweld yr hen gaffi yn cael ei ddymchwel yn rhywbeth trist wrth gwrs, ac yn rhywbeth oedd yn dod â un cyfnod i ben. Ond wedyn gweld y sylfaen yn mynd yn ei le a gweld y ffram ma'n cael ei osod gyntaf un gen mat. A dy cynnig yn gwybod bod rhywbeth reit arbennig a reit special amdan hynna. Pe oedd y ffram yn eistedd yma ben ei hun, ysbio fyny drwy'r Oculus ar yr awyr, oedd yn rhywbeth arbennig iawn, neu beth anghlifio hynna. A wedyn i weld o'n cael ei adeiladu fel rhyw jigsaw dros y misoedd wedyn. Ond rhywbeth arbennig a rhywbeth special i ni.
Manufacturing and transporting, bringing all of those 32 major elements together on a structure is a stressful procedure because it may be that something isn't going to fit quite right. And so to finally crane in the last piece and then tighten it all up, and to see it for the first time after 3 years from initial concept to delivery was incredibly satisfying and a little bit of a relief as well. So coming down from the Oculus is this really important feature of the building. It's a chandelier some 3 meters across and 1.5 meters tall of a creature called a radiolarian. This one in particular is a diatom. It's a group of creatures, an algae, which forms a silicate skeletal structure. We are all part of the natural world. It is not man and nature. It is one in the same. And so the central feature within the building is this carbon capture receptacle, this incredibly small and delicate little creature, but in its billions affects every other life form on the earth.
Felly oedd hi'n bwysig i ni bod y dyluniad, bod y cynllun, a bod yr ethos y tu nôl iddo fo yn amgylcheddol gyfeillgar wrth gwrs. Mi oedd gymaint o ail ddefnyddio y defnyddio creu ac yn y blaen yn bwysig bod ffordd ni'n groesogi. Ond hefyd ar ran o weledigaeth i'r dyfodol, bod o'n clymu fewn i ethos ni efo'n gweledigaeth celfyddydol, bod ni yn hybu bywyd gwell mewn ffordd allu bod ni gyd yn ymwybodol o peryglon i'r amgylchedd. A bod hwn fel adnodd yn pwysleisio hynna ac yn agor y llygad ni i'r problemau sy'n ymlaen ni efo'r amgylchedd a'r cnesu byd eang, ond hefyd efo adnoddau naturiol bendigedig sydd yma yn Llanbedrog yma. Dylanwad mae Matt Sanderson wedi cael o amgylchedd naturiol morol sydd yma i greu'r adeilad yma yn rhan creiddiol o hynna. Felly, da ni'n diolchgar iawn iddo fo am hynna.
I mean, it must have really driven them mad doing those 80,000 barnacles. The patience that he's shown and the willingness to work with the architect and with us as clients has been exemplary, and I wish him the very, very best with future projects.
So my hopes are that visitors, when they come into this building, they'll really enjoy the space that's been created, and that they'll be able to look at both the sculptural element and the practical element, and to see how how architecture and arts and engineering come together to create beautiful building forms and practical building forms that can be enjoyed for everybody.
Neges I Matt ydy, diolch fawr am fod yn ddewr i fynd lawr y siwrna ni efo ni. Chdi'n ddewr iawn o dod y cynllun fel nes di ger bron. Dewr iawn ar ran chdi roed wedi gwneud adeilad o'r blaen. dewr iawn o ran holl aberth y teulu'n gorau wneud mewn ffordd chi. Yn llawer o arian di wneud o'r cynllun bersonol chi, dwi'n siŵr, ond bod chi wedi cymryd y gwaith yn ei blaen, ac holl waith weldio a holl waith stiwdio yna o gyda chi yn ystod y haf pwythau gyda ni ers degawda anhygoel. Diolch fawr. Diolch fawr. A diolch Rachel.
This has been a 5-year block of my life and everybody involved, and there's so many people to thank, because this initial concept has now pulled in so much effort from so many people. It's a legacy for myself, for my family, and for everybody involved with the gallery. So I just want to say a really, really big thank you to all the trustees that believed in us, and to Gwyn Jones particularly, who trusted us with this. I just hope that everybody that visits the place in the future will see the amount of fun we've had in creating the building, but also see the value of the place as well.